Well, how's it going, folks? Let's give a proper intro. What's up, meatheads? Back with you for another video to pump up your day with some motorcycle content. As you can see, I am back on the road glide today. It's all back from getting tuned up. Got a new rear tire. Well, not so new anymore, but all tuned up, ready to go. And I've put a couple of tanks of gas through it since I've gotten the tune. And I have some opinions, and I got some information to share with you about the new setup. So, to give a quick little recap on, I guess my build. Originally, this bike, this is especially if you're new to the channel, this bike used to have a Bassani big radius 2-into-2 exhaust. It still has an S&S 475 chain driven cam, the S&S oil pump and cam plate, as well as their tappet cuffs, their lifters. It's got Fuel Moto adjustable push rods in there. This is a Fuel Moto AC/DC air cleaner, and it's been tuned on a dyno once before, and originally it made 106 horsepower and 119 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel on the dyno. Another key piece of information I do like to share with you guys is miles per gallon, because as much as miles per gallon makes a huge difference in how much you want to ride a bike, it still is going to cost you if it gets like 10 miles to the gallon, you know, in the end. Previously, with the old exhaust and the old tune, I was getting around 36 miles to the gallon at best. That's still with the average amount of riding for me, where I am actually going speed limit or going a little bit above, pulls, leaning through corners and riding kind of hooligan-like. So take that all into account. I got around 36 miles to the gallon on average. Now, let's talk about what's changed. So the cam is still the same, intake is still the same, all that internal stuff is still the same. I just swapped pipes. I swapped to the Bassani Road Rage 2 Mid Length Exhaust, as you can hear, and I did have to get it dyno tuned. The biggest reason why I got a dyno tune is that I have had this kind of nagging issue of my valves being extra loud, and I went to my mechanic. He looked it over and he said, you know, the only two things that it could be is that your bike is running hotter because you swapped the pipe. It's leaned it out somewhere, especially whatever RPM range you're in, and it's causing your bike to get a little bit extra hot, so it's thinning out your oil, or it's your push rods. Well, I decided let's hit two birds with one stone. And when the bike was in the shop, he gave my push rods an adjustment. He, basically undid them and did them again, and then we've dyno tuned it. And it doesn't help that this year has been a lot hotter and on average than previous years, so I still notice that my valves have a little bit extra noise, but I attribute it to the fact that it has been hotter this year than it was last year, and I just probably didn't notice it. But let's talk about what I like about this new exhaust and the whole setup. So the biggest thing that I've noticed that's different is this low end torque. So a lot of people had said before with my big radius exhaust that, oh, you're just dumping power out of the exhaust in the low RPMs. You're not making any power. You're not doing this. And honestly, I didn't really pay much attention to that comment, because I didn't think that I was losing that much power. It still felt like really strong down at the bottom, so it was like, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I don't really give a shit, But having swapped the exhaust and got it retuned and all that, holy crap, I was missing stuff down at the bottom end. I do feel like my top end isn't as powerful, but that just is what happens when you go into 2-into-1. you get a little bit more back pressure down at the low end so that you actually make some bottom end torque and whatnot. But when you get up into those higher RPMs, it becomes restrictive at that point. Whereas the 2-2s, they are not very restrictive on the bottom end, so you don't necessarily make a lot of torque on the bottom, but where you get a lot better performance is when you're up in the upper RPMs. Well, I don't always hang out at 4,000, 5,000 RPMs, so I think swapping the pipe was much more beneficial to me and my riding style than the big radius pipes. The next thing that I have enjoyed a bit more than the big radius pipes was the fact that the sound changed. I do like the big radius 2-2s, don't get me wrong. They still are a very awesome sounding set of pipes, but I would call the big radius 2-2 pipes being very similar to like a hot rod with really open headers, like just like basically off the headers and no actual full length exhaust, just open headers, just blah, 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 blah. It sounds really good at idle. It sounds really good at when you're revving it out. But for everyday riding, man, they get annoying. And like I never realized it because I was like, oh, they just sound good, I don't really give a shit. But when you go on long trips, that exhaust going 80 miles an hour on the interstate at like 3,000 RPMs, oh, that is in your ear forever. It'll give you such a headache. And it doesn't help that it's the 2-2s were like literally right in front of, they ended right in front of the right saddlebag here, so like that sound was right in your right ear all the time. And when you're going short distances, it's not a problem. When you're just out riding for fun, it's not a problem. But if you do any sort of traveling, that kind of a loud exhaust in your ear all the time definitely drones on the brain, and you'll have a headache after a while. This pipe is not as loud as the big radius. I mean, it's kind of comes with the fact that it is a longer exhaust, as well as having more pipe to go through, you know. The biggest difference being that the heads are being the same length. The front and the rear headers are the same length. They're stepped, and they come to a collector and out like a 3-inch muffler or 4-inch muffler. I don't know what the muffler size is off the top of my head. And it ends under the right saddlebag, so you get some protection from the sound with the saddlebag. But I would call the Bassani pipe more like a muscle car, you know, like an open, a catless muscle car sound. You know, it's very throaty, it idles, it's got a nice deep bass tone to it, but when you get it up in the RPMs, it still screams at the higher RPMs. It's just not as, I guess, aggressive on idle. So I think a lot of people on this channel might not like the change because it doesn't sound as good, but in person, it's a different story. Now let's get to the real point while you're here. What numbers did I make off of the new exhaust? You know, because 2-2s versus 2-1s, everybody says 2-1s are better for performance, right? Everybody's gonna say it. Well, the big, you know, the big cat in the room, the elephant in the room, what kind of power did I make? So drum roll, no idea. So this is where things are weird. This is where like my knowledge of like that I get from my job and like my background as a chemist kind of makes sense, or it applies to a lot of different things. Well, a dyno is an instrument. It measures horsepower and torque, right? It measures output of a motor. Any instrument after time starts to lose calibration because it's going off of a calibration file that was made however long ago. It could have been a year ago, and it could could be an old calibration file that it's going off of, and it becomes inaccurate over time. Well, the guy that I go to has an older dyno that's running older software for measuring the dyno, but he's using a Power Vision tuner to get the air-fuel mixtures right. So like my air-fuel mixture is spot on for what it needs to be. I have no complaints there. I don't feel any dead spots at all in the power. However, even he said he doesn't like the numbers that we got. So the numbers that we got were actually 110 horsepower, so I gained 4 horsepower, and 114 foot-pounds of torque. I gained some, lost some, that it comes to be a wash. Now all you guys out there are going to be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. How did you lose torque with a 2-in-1 exhaust? When you should be gaining torque. Well, that's the big conundrum. So was my previous dyno tuned? Were my previous dyno numbers accurate, or were these ones accurate, or is this one not accurate and the other ones were? Like, it's hard to tell. So unfortunately, I don't actually have real numbers to put to it. Personally, my seat of the pants says I have way more torque off of the bottom. Maybe not as strong up top, but I could also be the fact that my power band is a little bit more linear or more smooth, that when I get on the throttle, and even though when I get up in the upper RPMs, it's still pulling rather smooth. It's just not as like aggressive because of the 2-in-2 or the 2-in-1 versus the 2-in-2. I always felt like when I got up in those upper RPMs with my 2-in-2 exhaust that it just felt like it kicked on a little bit harder, like almost like you hit the boost. They hit the point where the boost kicks in and you just felt like you were like holding on for dear life. It doesn't feel like that now. It feels much more like, it feels like a smoother delivery of power throughout the entire RPMs. So in the end, it's like, I think that I made the smart choice to swap to this pipe. I just don't know what the accurate horsepower torque numbers are. I'd like to take it to another dyno and just have somebody throw it on and see what numbers it makes. But you know, that's not high on my priorities. I don't care about the numbers so much. I do care about how the bike sounds. I care about how the bike feels throughout its RPM range. And honestly, the biggest thing that's also changed too is I get better gas mileage. I've run 3 different tanks of gas through this bike now with the new tune, and all of them have encompassed a lot of various types of riding where I'm ripping through twisties, I'm going 100 miles an hour or more. I'm also cruising, going a distance, riding in the heat and all that. And I've gotten 40 miles to the gallon consistently through 3 tanks. So I've gained 4 mpg on the highway, or 4 mpg combined, I should say. So I gotta say that I can't really complain too much either if I've gained a little bit here, maybe lost a little bit here. But I've also gotten more efficient at making power, that I don't have to run it out just to get into the power band, and my bike is more efficient at moving me around, that I get 4 more miles to the gallon, especially when we're dealing with the gas prices like we are right now. I can't really complain then too much. So am I happy with this new exhaust? Oh, 100%. The biggest, I shouldn't say biggest, another positive side of swapping to this pipe is that if I ever do a big bore kit in the future, whether it's a 124 or if it's like a 119 or something like that, the positive of having this pipe already means that I don't have to swap it to make more power when I do a big bore kit. You know, if I had run the big radius 2-into-2s and I went to a big bore, odds are I'm just not going to be making a lot of power off of that big bore kit. But now if I swap to a big bore kit, keep the same cam, I should see much better numbers. You know, the pipe can make the difference, especially on these M8s. They flow so much air and so much more efficiently, especially with a good exhaust. So in the end, I'm very happy with the exhaust that I swapped to. It's also the pipe I originally wanted, but I couldn't justify spending $1,100 on it. So I decided, I was like, oh, I want to do this on a budget, so I'm going to only spend a couple $100 on an exhaust and hope that works. Well, in the end, it wasn't worth it because I still ended up buying the exhaust. I didn't buy it for $1,100. I got it for a little bit better price than that, but I still ended up buying 2 exhausts. I want to get around this guy quick. Yeah, that is a bit better. Again, like the low end part of the power band is just more smooth at getting me up and around things. Like, I don't have to be in the right gear at the right time or anything like that. Actually, no, I don't want to be in this lane. I don't want to be stuck behind a car. I want to be able to take off. The low end grunt is just more prominent, and it gets me up to speed quicker. And even if I short shift, I'm still sitting. I still can take off and accelerate around cars rather easily, and it kicks on really strong after 3,000 RPMs, which is where my bike used to feel like the power kicked on before, and not like 4,000. So that's my review, guys. Well, I hope that you all enjoyed watching this. If you want to get a new exhaust or a new cam or a big bore kit, or you're just looking to get some riding gear, please go to tuckerspeed.com. I have a code, an affiliate link with them that will save you 10% off any parts that you get from their site or gear or anything that you want. It'll get you 10% off, and 5% of that goes back to the channel so that I can buy new parts or do whatever it needs to help support the channel and bring you guys more content. So if you consider buying some parts, go to tuckerspeed.com first and save you some money. Also, if you enjoy motorcycle content, Harley content, or all motorcycles in general, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. I do make videos once a week. I also ride a lot of different bikes. I am not just a Harley snob. I love all motorcycles. Yeah, I like bike. So if you want to see me do other types of moto content, like riding Indians or BMWs or Kawasaki's, Yamahas, Hondas, whatever, be sure to leave comments down below what you want to see on those test rides. And until next time, guys, I will see you in another video. Hit your maxes and evade your taxes.